Dr. Lorraine Dickey is the co-founder and CEO of the Narrative Initiative and is with us today to tell us more about the benefits of the Write, Read, Reflect method. You're connected with the Heart of Hospice. I'm Jerry Fenter here with Helen Bauer.
Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, we're here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care.
Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at GrandPad. Do you have an older family member who's isolated, or do you feel disconnected from a senior loved one who lives at a distance? The folks at GrandPad have come up with the perfect solution, an easy-to-use device that connects older adults with family and friends using video chat, email, photo sharing, and more. Visit grandpad.net for details.
I think this is going to be one of my new favorites.
You say that almost every time.
I know, I do. But we have so many great people that we can get connected with. But today's guest, Dr. Lorraine Dickey, is just awesome. She's an innovator, an activist for a better experience of care within the healthcare system, both for patients and staff.
Right. She's a healthcare entrepreneur. And she's a motivational speaker as well as a board-certified neonatologist.
She's also a board-certified Pediatric Hospice and Palliative Medicine physician, and she's certified in Pediatric Bioethics. She also has an MBA in healthcare management.
My goodness, I'm just tired reading it.
I'm telling you, right? This lady is awesome. She founded the Narrative Initiative, LLC, in 2017. The Narrative Initiative, or TNI as they call it, focuses on two things: helping healthcare professionals decompress and remain resilient, and making communication between patients and providers efficient and effective.
TNI's mission is to help participants use their stories to focus on experiential language and improve their close listening skills. So this is one of the things that I'm always so high on and so impressed when people are able to do this. And that is they tell their stories. They listen to other people's stories. They focus in on what people are saying. I got really
unnaturally, abnormally excited about this.
Yeah, because I think what she's doing is so incredible. They're asking people to write their feelings, write whatever's in their heads. And I have to tell you, writing is literally writing on a piece of paper, pen, pencil, and a piece of paper.
You know you're telling her story.
I am. I'm not trying to tell her story, but I know that when you write, you have to think differently. When you speak and tell your story verbally, you don't have to think about it necessarily. It's going to come out. But when you're writing it down, it uses a different part of your brain, and there's some therapeutic benefits to that.
Yes, and she's going to talk about this. So the Narrative Initiative uses a program called the Write, Read, Reflect narrative method, and they found through their research that it positively transforms the experience of healthcare, both for those who give the care and those who must receive it.
So, okay, we're going to stop talking about it, and we're going to let Lorraine explain more about this. So, welcome our guest, Dr. Lorraine Dickey. Lorraine, we are so very happy to have you on the Heart of Hospice podcast today.
It is absolutely my pleasure to be here, Jerry and Helen. You know, Robert told me so much about you and Robert Party, and that's how we got connected. And I think that's, I've been waiting excitedly to connect with you.
We have been too. We're so glad to have you here. So you were telling us before we started the interview about these origami cranes that you make, and you said you've made how many thousands?
Oh, I've probably made close to 15,000. And my business partner's probably made close to 10,000. Yeah, so we've given them out all over the world. Yeah.
So what's the purpose behind that? You say you give them away. Tell me more about that.
Well, the legend behind the Japanese origami crane is that if you make 1,000 cranes, your wish will come true.
Okay.
And a lot of people will make them, as a wish that someone that they love who is sick or has cancer or themselves, that they get well. So they'll make 1,000 cranes. You can also make them in celebration. I've heard that Japanese fathers make them for their sons when they get married. I made my first 1,000 for my eldest son when he got married. And what we've learned is that it's a very simple, tangible way to say thank you to someone. So I have a tendency when we do work, and my business partner, Vivian Folk, does the same thing, is, we thank people by putting a crane in their hand and saying, I get to make the wish because I made the cranes. So
Right.
My wish for you is, we don't know how things are going to go, but we sure hope they go as well as they possibly can. And what we have found is, when you look someone in the eye and you give them something like that, and you have the human touch with their hand, it's a very authentic feeling. It's a way to be very human with your gratitude, as opposed to just, I don't know, here, let me write you a check, or here, let me swipe my insurance card, or here, the ways that we tend to be involved in relationships, but we don't necessarily say thank you in a very personal way. So our company is very much about relationships, and we think that's a way to help seal in some of the learnings, especially some of the kindness that we teach. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you
love
for
that.
asking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that idea. It's kind of your calling card, I guess, then.
It kind of has become a calling card. We do give it away to patients, and I've given them away to many hospice patients and palliative care patients, and in our nursery ICU, and colleagues when they do a cool thing. So we give them away every time we kind of see somebody doing something good.
That's nice. It's such a human touch. Very nice. Okay, so we're going to jump in and ask you a personal question, put you on the spot. As a physician, mid-career, you jumped to hospice and palliative care. What made you jump?
That's a really interesting question, because I think a lot of people who go into hospice and palliative care go into there because they had a personal experience with an end of life situation. For some reason, they feel like they have a calling to that. I actually went into it because it had to do more with patient and family-centered care. I personally think it's probably the ultimate medical discipline with patient and family-centered care. You cannot take care of a patient in hospice or palliative care without taking them in consideration of their family, their culture, their context. I wasn't always like that. I was kind of one of the, hotshot rising young intensivists who did a lot of procedures, and was kind of on the fast track to being a medical director. But in 2001, I had a catastrophic ski accident that almost killed me. Literally, they said, we think you're going to be out of work for about 3 months. And it took me almost 3 years to get back.
Oh, goodness.
And I really had to do some soul searching about whether I even wanted to come back and be a physician anymore. I really pretty much lost everything at that moment and had to make some decisions. When I did get the opportunity to come back into healthcare, a friend of mine introduced me to the concept of patient and family-centered care. And I said, this really speaks to me, because now I'm a patient. And now I've seen my family walk me through some incredibly difficult times. I mean, I had to learn to walk again. I had to learn to read. I had a bad head injury. I had other injuries. And it just took a long time to get better. So I had to have a lot of support. And interestingly, as I got back into newborn intensive care, I kind of moved up to be the medical director fairly quickly. And then I moved up to be the chief fairly quickly after that. And my platform really became patient and family-centered care. I really thought this whole concept of taking care of someone in the context of their family, which is a microculture in and of itself, has its own values, has its own ways of doing things, its own biases, its own values. I thought that was very important, because we found in my experience that when I was taken care of that way, my whole family had a better experience. And when I wasn't, it kind of was awful for everybody. It's interesting. It's taken me about 20 years to really put this in perspective, to really think about this. But I learned that, when you diagnose one person with an injury or an illness, you diagnose the whole family with an injury or illness. And it doesn't matter if that's an end-of-life illness or if that's appendicitis. The whole family gets affected somehow. I learned that it's a real privilege to be in medicine and stand by patients during times of great crisis, but also at times of great joy. And one of the things about healthcare is we don't get a chance to talk about the joys often enough. We do talk a lot about the problems. And finally, I learned that technical competence is assumed. People assume that I know what I'm doing as an intensivist. They don't vet me based on the number of procedures I've done. They assume that. But when they come into care, and, the example I often use is when someone comes into the ER with a broken leg, you come in for a service, which is to fix my broken leg. And then that person walks out getting their broken leg fixed. Why is it that they rate you low on the surveys instead of high? You did what they wanted to do. You fixed their leg. And the reason is because you didn't care for them in the way that they expected to be cared for. You may have thought you gave good care, but their perception of their experience of care was that it wasn't what they wanted or wasn't as good as they thought it should be. And mostly because they'll tell you it's because I was never asked. It was just care was done to me instead of with me. And the whole premise behind patient and family-centered care is to do care with patients and families, not to patients and families, right? So as I got back into working, I'll jump back a little bit. As I was the medical director and the chief, I also happened to become the liaison for the pediatric liaison for the Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, the program that was in my hospital. And they said, hey, you're kind of interested in this. And I said, yeah, I kind of am. I was the one that was always, Dr. Dickey will be here. She'll talk to you about that. She'll talk to you about that. I seem to have a way to talk to people. And then they ended up sending me out to Harvard to the called PSEP, Patient Palliative Care Education Program. That's what it's called at Harvard. And that's about a 6-month process that you go to. And I came back and I was helping them out some more, because of my injury. And I had gone on and actually had 2 more pretty serious head injuries, concussions. I was starting to have some fatigue issues, and my job requires you to be able to do 24/7 shifts. So it was becoming obvious I was going to have to transition to something else. And I decided at that time that hospice and palliative care was the way I wanted to go, mostly because I wanted to continue to promote the policies and practices of patient and family-centered care. I felt better as a provider when I was able to give care in that fashion, because I know it was received better, it felt better, and regardless of what the outcome was, the process was as good as we could make it. So I have a little bit of a funny way of getting to it.
So your perspective as a patient, right? It changes the way you think when a healthcare provider becomes a patient. I think as any healthcare provider that as you get older and you experience your own health issues, I've done it, Jerry's had issues, you all of a sudden become a patient and you have this incredible perspective and insight into what you have been inflicting. I hate to use the word, but inflicting on people for years, not having any idea of what that impact would be. So I think that's actually an incredible gift. You have to go through hard things to get to it, but what a gift to be able to have that perspective as a provider. But you're saying something that I think is very interesting. For you to provide patient and family-centered care, it not only gave the receiver, the consumer of the care, a better experience, but gave you a better experience as a care provider.
Absolutely.
And that's part of what the narrative initiative is built upon, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The narrative initiative, it's interesting how this whole thing got started. Our mission at the narrative initiative is to try to make the experience of healthcare feel better for people who choose to get into healthcare and for people who have no choice but to receive healthcare. So that's really a vast majority of us trying to make it feel better. And when I was actually putting patient and family-centered care into our intensive care unit, the philosophies, it went well for about 3 or 4 months. And then most of the staff said, no, we're over this. We are so over this. I'm tired of having, parents and family members present 24/7. I'm tired of having to check out in front of them. I'm tired of not having a place to kind of be alone. This is really hard. And what we found out really was that what I thought was good care and was easy to do was not what my staff thought was easy to do. So we backed up and said, no, don't slip my tires yet. I said, just take it easy a second. We'll work this out. One of the things that we brought in a number of things, but one of the things we happened to bring in was an adaptation of what's called narrative medicine that was pioneered at Columbia Medical Center by Dr. Rita Sharon. It has to do with the experience of patient's illness through the patient's eyes. And I went and did some training there and brought it back and said, not quite right. We have to be careful. Because we were reading like Dostoevsky, and you're not going to get people to read that over the lunch hour. It's not going to happen.
No.
But what we did was we altered it so that we used the stories of our staff. So we would have them come in and say, I want you to take a few minutes to write a story that was about an experience where taking care of patients and families was difficult or challenging, or where it was uplifting and inspiring. So what happened was initially they kind of answered, some safe stories until they got used to the process. Then they would start dumping some really hard stories, because these are stories that we don't have places to decompress. These are stories that we carry around for a long time, like rocks in our backpack. We carry them, and there's really no good place to decompress. It's much easier to have a meaningful exchange in a group of people who get you, as opposed to trying to decompress at the dinner table. It's just not that easy to do. So we found that people would come, they would finally dump these stories. And once they came 3 or 4 times, 5 times maybe, they had to answer the prompt from the positive. They didn't have a bad story to tell anymore. They answered from the positive, and it remoralized our workforce. The other thing it did was it allowed our staff to begin to know each other as human beings by story. So they didn't just know each other based on position. It wasn't the doctor and the nurse at the code. It was Joe and Jody who knew each other, and they both valued family, and they knew a little bit why they were in the foxhole together. That made things go better. So actually, when we brought new people on board, it takes a while to onboard somebody new, but we found if we sent them to these sort of sessions, then people, either by the stories they shared or how they reflected on the story, then people found out what they were about, their values, their cultures, whether they meshed with the culture. And they could then go out and blend with the culture much faster. We had people blend within 3 or 4 months instead of 2 or 3 years. I mean, the onboarding was dramatically different from a leadership standpoint. It's a really, really good tool. So it was fascinating. So I had an opportunity. Things were changing for me. People over the years had said, Lorraine, maybe you should take this to other places. It turned out to be quite successful where we were at. And we ended up doing it once a month. And then other people asked us to do it. And we did all kinds of different narrative sessions for all kinds of different units. We made half-day workshops on patient and family-centered care, on compassion, fatigue, and burnout, on professionalism, on a number of different topics. And so in 2017, it was like, well, I think I'm going to regret it if I don't try it. And that's when the narrative initiative really came to be. It's not like I was looking to become an entrepreneur. It just happened to be a time when I thought, I'm going to regret it if I don't try this. Other people were saying, we think you have something that can help us. And, I'm what they call, this is what they call an encore career. It's kind of I'm kind of toward the latter half of my days. And if you have a chance to leave it better than you found it, I think you should try. John F. Kennedy said, everybody can make a difference and everybody should try. One person can make a difference and everybody should try. So I've always kind of thought that made sense to me. I've got something, it seems to help people. I'm in a position I can try it. Let's try to make it better than we found it and try to give people a way to listen to each other better, a way to build trust and respect among conversations quickly. And it happened to be that it's a way that also is a meaningful way to decompress and build resilience and feel validated and supported.
Today's episode is sponsored by the team at GrandPad. They recognize that older people can be intimidated by technology. GrandPad is created to be easy to set up and effortless to use. The device allows for email, games, music, and photo and video sharing. The video chat feature came in so handy when my family couldn't visit my mom during the pandemic. She loved seeing photos of her grandkids and great-granddaughter. My brother acts as administrator for my mom's GrandPad. When he has a question, GrandPad customer service is quick and easy to understand. My brother was even able to give my mom instructions that she could follow over the phone. GrandPad comes with 4G LTE cellular service already included, so there's no need for Wi-Fi. Creating a family network is as simple as sending an email. When I got the email, I just downloaded the app and signed in. As part of her private network, I can share my photos and see what other members of the network are sharing. At 88 years old, my mom sent her first email. She was so proud of herself and excited to learn to manage technology. GrandPad keeps my mom connected with our family and can keep you connected to your family too. You can find more details at grandpad.net. Now back to today's episode.
So is the write, read, and reflect narrative, is that kind of the foundation of the narrative initiative?
Absolutely, Jerry. You're right on the money. In fact, if you take that metaphor out from your backpack, we say that, writing allows you to reach in and grab a rock and look at it. Reading allows you to explore that rock and kind of turn it around. But the magic happens when other people reflect on your story and say, how did it feel to hear that story? And that's when you hear the other people going, hey, I was in a situation like that, looked like this. It happened like this, looked like this. I was in that same situation with that same patient. This is my perspective on it. And what we found is that allows you to then either take that rock and put it down and move on. Can't make a better past, but you can put that down now and move on. Or as Vivian likes to say, the rock gets smaller, and you can actually throw it like it's small enough now, you can just skip it over the water and throw it away. So it gets it to a manageable position. So we know full well that anybody we work with is going to go right back out, have another experience, and put another rock right back in. But we hope that using the write, read, reflect method, which is, 3 minutes, you write, you read verbatim, then you can throw it away at the end of the day. And we've had executives say, hey, I used it at the end of the day. What happened that was good? What happened that was challenging? And I write it, I read it out loud to myself, then I throw it away. And then I get in my car and I can hear the music on the way home.
It's just sort of an offloading.
It is. We started it as communication to get people to listen to each other better, because we actually pick out words. When we in the reflective process, the facilitators, our trained facilitators, pick out qualitative language, like the word frustrated. I hear you use the word frustrated. I know what frustrated feels like to me. What does it feel like to you? What do you mean by it? Because so many of us in healthcare have been trained to listen quantitatively. We've been trained with templates in our head that are like the electronic medical record. We know what we're listening for. But the problem is the disconnect comes because patients talk in qualitative language. They talk in the language of story. So somehow we have to, as qualitative scientific people, learn to listen for these qualitative words that allow us to step into the life of that person What do you mean by that word? Doesn't matter what I think of it. What do you mean by it? What is your values? Where's your culture? And by doing that, people go, oh my God, you heard me. You use my own language. So that's a huge one. That breeds respect. So you get heard, you feel respected. It makes you want to lend trust to that person because you're stepping into an experience. So these are the things that we have found happen with this process over time. Or actually, once you do it one time and people can go away and use the tool right away. But we find that over time, it also lends the person to use it as a personal tool for decompression, or teams to use it over time with decompression. And we've had great success using it with folks in hospice and palliative care. We just trained some folks in Orem, Utah, Braid's Place, as a matter of fact. It's the only community pediatric palliative care organization in Utah. And they now use this process in the homes with the families and siblings of kids who need palliative care.
So it's not just for providers, it's for families as well.
I'd always thought it would work that way because we've worked with teachers and we've worked with business people and other groups, but I was always hesitant to say it until we actually had the data, because that's the scientist in me. But when they invited us out and said, hey, we think your stuff could be useful for these families. So we went out there and trained them and went into the houses of folks. And it's actually amazing how well it was received, how you could get the teenagers and the parents to both really bring their humanity and authenticity and drop their roles and titles for about an hour, share a human experience. It's really neat.
So does the Narrative Initiative train other healthcare providers on how to use this method?
We absolutely do. We have about, it takes 16 to 20 hours to do the training. And we get them set up in a number of different platforms. We use small group and large group platforms, and we get them comfortable doing it. It's a little bit different. We have learned from a facilitation standpoint, because usually when you facilitate something, you're kind of going toward an endpoint. Like, I'm teaching this, so I want you to learn this. We actually have to have facilitators unlearn a little bit of this, because we have to be married to the process and not the outcome. We are only married to the fact that people go through this process and we're true to the process. The group facilitates themselves by doing the reflecting. And then they leave and go, wow, that wasn't so bad. Maybe, what did we learn there? Maybe we can make some changes. So that's how we do. And thank you for asking that. Yeah, we've trained people in Australia. We've trained people in quite a bit across the United States. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
So do you do this virtually, or do they have to come to your place, or do you go to theirs? How does that work?
We actually have found that going to them in person works the best. We have done it virtually. We have one person in Colorado, Wendy Herr, who practices out there, and she was trained virtually, but I think she was the exception to the rule. Most people do so much better in person. The other reason is we recommend you work in pairs, because this could be really emotionally activating work. No two sessions are ever the same. So you hear different stories. And sometimes I've done it. Viv has had to kick me under the table and say, stop it. You're going down a rabbit hole because that activated you. So someone else has to step in. So we like to go there so we can get them working with each other, so they know each other's strengths and weaknesses and then are successful on their own.
Very interesting. So you've taken this into healthcare. You're using it with healthcare providers, right? And goodness knows we've never been exposed to more compassion fatigue, more burnout, all across the industry, not just hospice and palliative care, right? And it doesn't matter the discipline: physicians, nurse practitioners, social workers, chaplains, nurses, aides, volunteer coordinators, you name it, right? We're all experiencing this over the last couple of years with the pandemic. What advice would you give to people working in healthcare? You are a healthcare professional experiencing the same burnout, the same compassion fatigue. What advice would you offer to other healthcare professionals that are experiencing the same things?
That's a really excellent question. And I know you were going to ask me that, so I had to think about it. Probably retrospectively, I've had, my share of burnout and compassion fatigue. Empathy fatigue, I think, is really even a better way it's more empathy fatigue. I think self-care has a lot to do with it. I think there's a really excellent book called The Thriving Doctor, right here, by Cherie Johnson. She's a psychologist and a coach, actually. And this has to do about thriving in healthcare. And the key to it, honestly, is balance, is to saying my relationship with my job is part of my life. My relationship with my family is another part of my life. My relationship with myself is part of my life. And trying to find some balance and being able to talk about hard things in different parts of our lives, and not waiting until you're, 60 like me to learn to do these things. And also, I think it's incumbent upon organizations to offer safe spaces in order for people to have these conversations. I think that's part of it. The number one barrier we run into working with organizations is time. If we have people come work with you for an hour, well, that's an hour they can't see patients.
Right.
So what's the return on investment for wellness? Well, what's the return on investment for not taking care of yourself wellness? As you know, suicide in the healthcare professions is high. It's higher than average. That's part of the return on investment when you don't take care of yourself. How many marriages dissolve? How many kids feel like they're neglected because their mom is at the ICU more than she's with, with us, and she missed my birthday again. I speak a bit from personal experience about that. There is some balance I wish that I had, or that the organization I worked with valued that, as opposed to valuing the amount of work that I could do.
Right. So
I think self-care, to be honest with you, I think that's really, really, really critical. And having boundaries early on.
I think there's such an attitude or a mindset among leadership in healthcare organizations that has to do more with quantifiable benefit versus burden, rather than qualitative benefit versus burden. You can't see ROI on allowing somebody to take a mental health day unless you're able to calculate the longevity and reduce turnover. But it's such an intangible. And when it comes down to bottom line and numbers, it's very hard to tap into the effects of providing self-care for those enhanced team experiences, understanding of family commitments, respecting of personal time boundaries. I think we're bad at that. We're bad at that.
And Helen, you hit it on the head, because I think that's why healthcare is reactive instead of proactive with these things. Once we have a sentinel event and that resident jumps out the window, now I realize, my God, maybe we should have wellness. But if you had done that all along and that didn't happen, how do you quantify that?
Right.
Right.
But you can't quantify events in the future that might or might not happen.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, I think we're getting to the point now where, a lot of staff have told the organizations, you know what? Look, I'm up. I'm done. I'm fed up. I'm out of here. I mean, what organizations are paying to keep nurses on staff is crazy. And what it really takes is something that shows you value their humanity, not simply that you value their work. Most of the people in healthcare that I've worked with, and the nursing colleagues who have raised me and I, that I love so dearly, they're in the profession because they feel like that's a calling. They feel like that's what they want to do. And they will do it. They ask little in return. But what they do ask is that you value their humanity. And part of it is putting in proactive wellness, regardless of whether there are sentinel events or not. to take care of people going forward. And I think that's something that organizations are going to have to get their head around to figure out retention issues and, simply how to keep staff happy and not leave, right?
I think there's such a difference in investing in your company and investing in your people. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference.
It always comes down to people, doesn't it? It always comes down to the number one resource you have to have is people.
It's your people.
Definitely, exactly. Especially in healthcare.
So got to take care of your people somehow. And it comes down, it's interesting. You said, talk about burnout and compassion and empathy fatigue, compassion fatigue. I think that has to do with a lot of from us being used to being used up by systems and saying that that's okay. Yes. Saying that's okay because that's what's been modeled from the generations before us. You don't need a sick day. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I sucked it up when I was in training. You can suck it up too. Those kinds of what I call child abuse begets child abuse. You at some point have to break those cycles. I think the problem is we're so used to the quantitative evaluation of what we do. You can't do that much of it if you look at these other things. Somehow we have to make the systems work. They have to make money. I totally get that. But you can't burn out you can't use your people up completely. You do have to at some point find out, what keeps them there. Yeah. Why they're there.
It's not an inexhaustible resource.
Well, boy, have we not found that out.
Yes, the hard way.
The hard way.
Yeah, yes, staffing issues right now are a huge problem. And it goes back to exactly what we're talking about. So let me ask you, Lorraine, could this write, read, reflect method be something that a healthcare provider would use for themselves to help with issues like this? And can you give us a little bit of an idea, maybe kind of an atomic look at how would somebody use this? How would they use the write, read, reflect method?
I think that's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that, Jerry. When people come to our sessions, we say you're going to get two things out of these sessions. One, you're going to learn to listen. You're going to develop what we call athletic, because you can't use them, athletic, reflective listening skills that help you take care of other people. And you're going to get a wellness tool that helps you take care of yourself. So the best way to use it for yourself is to, let's say one of the programs we do is we've worked with a university here called St. Luke's University, and we've worked with them this is our third year now that we've worked with them. And their graduate medical education learners have told us, hey, I used to write a little bit, but I found that writing, it takes a long time. I don't really know necessarily what to write about at the end of the day. This is a very practical tool that I can say, look, at the end of a day when I'm feeling a little unsettled, can I just free flow write, take 3 minutes to write about something difficult or something uplifting, set my timer for 3 minutes and just let my brain go. Wherever it goes is wherever it goes. You're done. Boom. 3 minutes goes off. And we say you write your way in, you write your way through, you write your way out. So kind of finish your thoughts and read them to someone you trust, read them to yourself verbatim in the mirror, or just read them verbatim. There is something about not prefacing, not saying, oh, this is going to be a hard thing to hear, but just hearing the words you wrote, honoring the language you chose. So you hear it. There's an emotional kick when you hear that allows you to release that a little bit. You may feel more emotion than you thought you might feel. But when you're done with it, you can just take a breath. You can put it down. And then you can frame it. You can wrap fish with that paper. You can burn it, but it's down. It's out. So it stops the perseveration and allows you to put it on paper where it's real and you can see it. And then you can move on from that standpoint. Doesn't mean it's necessarily all dealt with, but it stops some of the perseveration. And I think that's a real problem that healthcare professionals have, regardless of what profession. You go from this patient to this patient to this patient to this patient on a very time-mandated schedule. And you don't get a chance to really debrief these things. It's really hard. What do you do with all of it? What do you do with all of it? So if you can do that, our residents have said, wow, this is a really great tool because now it's structured. It doesn't take really long. I can do it day after day after day, and I can move on. So that's from a self-care standpoint, it works. We found teams that can do it together. You find 3 or 4 people, you do this, once a month, once every couple of weeks with your team. Makes a big difference. Yeah.
We've been talking about self-care, and we're going to get real personal with you now. And we're going to ask you, what is your current go-to healthy? And we emphasize healthy because not all self-care is healthy.
Sometimes I think we should ask for the unhealthy ones.
No. Let's not do that. But what is your current go-to healthy self-care habit?
Probably cycling. I was a big runner, but then I one of my knees got messed up in the ski accident I had. And then the other one just kind of gave up over time. So I don't run as much, but we do cycle. Now I have a Peloton, so we use that. And we do a lot of, as weather permits, it's just now getting to be cycling season. My husband and I and my friend, we go cycling quite a bit. And the other thing I do is I knit. I do a lot of knitting. In the evening, we'll binge something. Who knows what is streaming. And I'll knit. My mom taught me to knit when I was 6, 7 years old. I didn't get to do it for a long time. And I picked it back up the last few years, and I make a lot of blankets now. It's very meditative. I can think about all kinds of things, or I can think about nothing.
Right.
But at the end of it, after a couple of weeks, I actually kind of have something to show for it. Can't complain.
Yeah, which is nice too.
For type A people who need something to show something for their time.
It's one of those time well wasted when you have something.
It's time well wasted.
Yeah.
My mother, bless her heart, she died. But I think she would think that was cool that my sister and I both knit and carry that on.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool. Lorraine, we are so happy that we got to connect with you and to learn more about the Narrative Initiative. We can certainly see so many positive advantages of using this, and we want to encourage our listeners to go to your website. Tell us the website.
The website is www.thenarrativeinitiative.com.
Okay, very good.
And it's .com. There is a .org, but that's a branding company. But ours is .com.
Right, and it is the Narrative Initiative, right?
The Narrative Initiative. You just have to spell initiative right. That's all.
We'll make sure we put links in the show notes to your website, and so our listeners can get in touch with you very easily.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. We're glad to have you here.
Absolutely, our pleasure. Anything we can do for you, we're just another tool in your back pocket. Happy to help.
I think Lorraine is just an amazing person in general. I love her depth and her bandwidth of who she is as a person, a skier, an athlete, a cyclist. She knits, she makes origami cranes, she works in the NICU, and now she's got the Narrative Initiative. It's just an amazing span of talents, I guess, is what I would say.
Oh, absolutely. So many things that she can do. And you often say about people who have all these different interests, they're the jack of all trades and master of none. Oh, that's not her.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she has many things that she is very talented at.
So she has made, what did she say, 10,000?
Oh, 15,000.
15,000 origami cranes, which I find very beautiful. I have received an origami crane at a funeral for a friend of mine who was of Asian descent, and it's a very meaningful thing. So I love it that they're doing that. So the work that the Narrative Initiative does is about resilience. It's about conserving and preserving and renewing the people that we have working inside healthcare.
And we need this today more than ever.
Yes, we do. So we have to thank the Narrative Initiative, and we need to thank Dr. Dickey and the work that she is doing there, along with her business partner, Vivian Folk. just amazing work. Amazing work. We hope that our listeners, anybody who's listening to this, who could benefit from this and would like to bring it to their organization, that you'll connect with the work that the Narrative Initiative is doing. You can visit their website at thenarrativeinitiative.com. You can also connect with Dr. Dickey on LinkedIn and her business partner as well, Vivian Folk, on LinkedIn.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of Hospice. I'm Jerry Finter here with Helen Bauer. Because we know your hospice journey is 24/7, you can always find us at theheartofhospice.com. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening and leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts.
To connect with us, just send an email to host@theheartofhospice.com. You can also find us on social media. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.